Storyteller number 3 feels fortunate to get paid to live his passion, which is to help people flourish. He is an avid hiker, photographer, and movie buff, and you could say that he talks for a living. Everyone, please put your hands together for Jeff Frenster.
Thank you. Good evening. So I was thinking about the theme tonight is metamorphosis, and that's a really big word. And not just because it has a lot of letters in it, which it does, but also because it's imbued with tremendous meaning and symbolism. When I think of metamorphosis, and it's probably the cliched go-to answer, I think of the remarkable journey of a caterpillar emerging finally as a beautiful butterfly. And in thinking about that, being honest, much of my life in this analogy, I would say, has been spent in the caterpillar phase. And the reason why I say that, unremarkable, to a certain extent invisible, and certainly vulnerable. Growing up, maybe like some others here tonight, not unusually, I experienced a significant amount of bullying in school, and that came at a very formative time. One of the distinct memories that I have is during recess, quite frequently being out on the football field and really feeling like I had a invisibility suit on because there was no more chance of the ball being thrown to me on the field than if I was still back in the classroom skipping recess. So that alternated, kind of these periods of being invisible alternated with periods of unwanted negative attention. And again, this is not unique to me, but one of the things that it did is it created a vision for me of my life in which I was a solitary traveler on the road. And like everything, it's a mixed bag. It gave me a sense of independence and self-reliance, but in other ways, really my go-to mindset was that I only had occasional and relatively trivial interaction with the rest of the world. So kind of flash forward to the first jobs that I held in my career. I would say like the first 6 jobs, continuing this analogy, this was kind of the pupa phase. And for those of you that are not biology majors, that's when the caterpillar goes into its little cocoon, preparing for the actual metamorphosis. And then if we fast forward to a really key period for me, which was June of 2003. So in December of 2002, I had just started at this new company, and it was a totally different role for me. The company took a big chance. I took a big chance on it because I figured I was ready to kind of shake things up and stop kind of sleepwalking through my professional life. So I came to this accounting firm, and this day in end of June 2003, we're at the Hyatt Regency here in San Francisco, beautiful hotel. And it is my very first annual meeting with the firm. Okay. And I'm very conscious of the fact that this is a very key point for me because I have a lot of hope with regard to coming to this company and kind of making some positive change in my own life. And up to this point, I'd kind of been a fish out of water, had been relatively low-key. And then the managing partner of the firm at that time, Brian, asked me a couple months before, probably in April, to give a presentation at the annual meeting in front of the whole firm and represent the administrative group of which I was a part. And this was a really huge point, both for the group, because it was the first time that the group was going to be represented at a company meeting, and of course for myself personally, because of the fact that this would be my first opportunity to interact with the entire firm community at once. So I spent a lot of time prepping, worked with a couple of my close colleagues, and then the big day came. So I'm standing in the back of the room, the entire firm is there. One of the very senior partners is speaking before me, and finally I hear my name called, and I take a breath and start walking calmly up to the stage at the front of the room, thinking all these things. I guess the best way to describe how I was feeling at that point was that my palms were sweaty, my knees were weak, and my arms were heavy. With apologies to Eminem there. But I do want to point out, and there are people who can verify this, that in fact there was no vomit on my sweater already. Okay, so I go up. I'm really enamored of PowerPoint. This is before I read the article that entitled very provocatively, "Is PowerPoint Making Us Stupid?" So at that point, I definitely didn't think that. I thought it made us all that. So I take the clicker in my hand, and I have my little ritual. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is take a deep breath. At least I tried to. But truth be told, it was much more like standing, what it would be like to stand on the top of Mount Everest. I could only take about a half breath. My breathing was very shallow. So I figured, okay, I'll click the button. My first slide came up. It's all good. I'm off and running. And I'm conscious of the fact that the whole firm community, which is a little over 100 people at that point, is looking at me. And then I click the second slide. And life has a funny way of doing this to you that right when you least expect it, it kind of overturns the cart. So I had created this whole elaborate slideshow thing because, as I mentioned, I was really into PowerPoint and its effects. And so I had this particular slide was a super important one where I had to show all the goals of the firm for our group. I had to show it to the whole firm. So I click it. They come in just as expected, and then something really, really bad happened. They kept going and disappeared off the top of the screen. Really, it couldn't be much worse than this. You know, time slowed down for me. It seemed like, you know, every second was a minute. I look back at my colleague, Patty, who was one of my closest colleagues, and she ran our annual meetings at that point. Looking to her for some reassurance, I don't know what, and she kind of shrugged her shoulders as if to say, "Dude, you're totally screwed." I'm like, yeah, that's a fair point. Okay, not very helpful, but it is accurate. And so I'm thinking one of the things that kind of my early childhood experience had really placed in me was kind of this fight or flight thing of like, okay, how do you get out of the box type thing. So I'm thinking like, what can I possibly do? Two thoughts came into my mind. First one was, where's my invisibility suit when I really need it? I'd never perfected the art of actually conjuring it up on demand. And then secondly, if you pardon the profaneness of this, I was thinking to myself, like, what the fuck do I do now? Everything was hanging in the balance for me. Okay, this is my debut with the firm. People are going to, based on what I do here, they're either going to accept me or they're going to make me the butt of jokes. It turned out that subsequently I was the butt of jokes, but not for reasons involved with this meeting. I wasn't able to see that far ahead. And then an idea came into my head, the only one, so I had to grasp at it. And I made eye contact with the managing partner who was sitting like in the second row. And I said as calmly as I possibly could, well, Brian said that we had to show our goals. He just didn't say for how long. So let's move on to the next topic. Okay, kind of a little Houdini act there, right? And then an amazing thing happened, a life-changing thing happened. The audience erupted in laughter and support, and probably for the first time Perhaps in my life outside of my family, I felt a profound level of acceptance and support. And I realized in that moment that I had found my tribe. It, like anyone who goes through a metamorphosis, it brings to your life a whole new sense of purpose and a whole new determination to live your life. And in my case, as Justina mentioned, my passion is to help people, to empower people at the firm. And in closing, to quote, paraphrase a line from a famous movie, I see invisible people. Thank you very much.